There were members of my family who were part of the clergy who were quite corrupt. And that distanced you from your faith. It wasn't working for me in the way that I felt fulfilling. It didn't connect with me in a way that Islam did. When I met Muslims for the first time, many Muslims who gained great dawah by word and deed when I went to college, they were able to show me a different way, something that attracted me to Islam, that spoke to me in my heart in a different way than the faith that my family had introduced me to. And again, when you speak about it that way, which is completely true, people understand that spiritual journey, that spiritual quest, and from there you often have a very good conversation. So I hope that answers your question.
Partly. I'm sure that other than those, people who gave you dawah and helped you embrace Islam, mashallah, you must have met other people from other religions like Buddhism, Hindus, other religions as well, Judaism, for example. Mm-hmm. Why Islam?
Islam spoke to me. That was the thing that for me coincided to some personal beliefs that I had, and it was moved me towards a better place. It called me to a higher level of understanding of Allah, and really meshed well with the disciplines that I was trying to instill in my own life.
Other question is rather maybe silly, and I've heard non-Muslims, instead of Muslim, say Muslim.
Oh, yes.
Why is that?
What's that?
Why is S pronounced as Z? I don't know why.
Know. Yeah, I've heard it mispronounced multiple different times.
Yes.
Islamics or Mohammedans, if you want to get really old school. Often, I think people just don't really know.
The Muslim has a different meaning.
Yeah. So I think I would say that often just people really don't know. So again, politely, but whenever you can, inshallah, you're able to correct that. And it's something I had to do to my board of directors last week.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm from non-background Muslim, but it doesn't occur to me to ask you whether it's really we're missing a link between us and the American society as a Muslim. Generally, they don't know, a big percentage from the American society, they don't know nothing about Islam.
It's true.
What are we missing here? What is the lead? What we need to improve that as a Muslim?
I would again, fortunately, I would put that burden on Muslims themselves. Because, as you said, they don't know anything, oftentimes. Generally, because they are a blank slate, the best that you can do is come with them with complete knowledge. As complete knowledge as possible. If you are living your deen in the way that you should, and you can show them, explain, this is why I do this. The worst you can probably say is like, well, I don't know why I do this, or I don't really understand this, but I just couldn't do it. That's not helpful to them. That's not helpful to you.
I mean, we do a lot of workshops, a lot of conferences. A great organization like CAIR-MI always call in for this meeting, but still we are not reaching out yet. So what do we need to do that? I mean, I'm really coming from a journalist background. That's really an interesting question for me because I'm looking into that based on a non-Muslim background like you maybe. How did you get into Islam? Is that word mouth or somebody lead you to do this or media or conferences? What is it exactly?
Well, for myself, that was a personal thing. But again, a lot of these things will probably just take time. You know, the Islam community has been here for hundreds of years, but in such numbers as we had, not until quite recently. And this is probably going to be where it's really dominating the media, really shaping that message. That will take time, and really tackling and addressing those incorrect stereotypes and have you. Think of the Asian communities, for example, where they were for many years presented very badly in racial stereotypes, or my own, for example, my Hispanic community. Even now, with how many Hispanics do you see in positive light in the media? How many positive Russians do you see in the media? These are things that take time, and it takes very intentional efforts to do that, to really get in the front of the camera, to get in front of the newspaper, to get in front of the YouTube or what have you, and really craft that message and make it your own.
Is that really, I'm sorry if I'm allowed to ask you more questions if the time allows, is that really, we need to tell more story about us as a Muslims? Is that the way you get into the American, by telling story more than getting directly for them? Is that right?
I'm not a journalist, but I would say that definitely couldn't hurt. But again, the one must always wonder like where the message is, who's seeing what. I'll give you a strange example. I watched this action movie, Predators, last weekend with my mother and father. And there was a Russian actor who played a Russian soldier. And he was very proud of this role because he said this was the first time since the Cold War that a Russian had been presented in a very positive light. And this was a big deal for him. It was a big deal back home. And he was, he was in a silly action movie where he was killed 30 minutes into the movie. But it was a big deal for him because you're role modeling, you're showing in a positive light a character and a people that have been in our country shown very negatively for a long time. So, small things, big things, as much media outlet as we can garner and grab hold to and shape that message, I would say is probably for the best. Now, I would ask the brothers if they had any questions, so we still have some time. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for your lecture so far. It's been really helpful. I recently graduated from Eastern Michigan with a minor in religious studies, and there were a lot of interactions with non-Muslims. And like, there's always a good number of Christians who are very committed to converting you.
Yes.
They'll invite you to their house and like offer you like the most exotic kind of coffees and things like that. So like, as a Muslim, how do you like, what do you do in that situation? Like, where do you draw the line when you hear them out, when you talk to them, when you present your religion?
That is a difficult question. The founder of my organization, I'm actually co-director. The founder of my organization is a very religious man. He's a very religious Christian, and that's something he just tries to convert everyone. He's loud and proud about that. That's really kind of what he does. To give you a personal example, I was doing a workshop at in a Hispanic church that happened to be a Pentecostal church. So not only were these my people, but they were very active and involved in converting everyone else, because that's kind of what they did. And again, you must find your own comfort level. If the conversation immediately starts going to, brother, you really need to read this, and this religion that you're doing, that's not the way to go, and you're starting to feel that pressure and you're starting to feel uncomfortable, there ultimately becomes a line where it starts to become disrespectful and maybe, like, I'm not saying it's dangerous to your dean, but you just feel uncomfortable, where it becomes like, well, we're straying into friend territory, into something else now. Obviously you want to respect them as a friend, and I'm sure many of them will say, I'm doing this because I am your friend. You're going to have to find your own level of comfort where, like, okay, we're going to have to agree to disagree to, we're not going to talk about this, or I can't come over anymore, because it's making me uncomfortable. And that's not an easy thing to say, but if it's to that point where it's constantly brought up, constantly in your face, obviously I would encourage you, if you have that level of dean where you feel you can do that, you can match wits, and you can try to convert them, which of course has happened many times, then I would encourage you to do that. But if you feel that it's going to be a trial, it's going to be something that's unpleasant for you, I would say, like, what's the point of keeping company with something like that? Other questions? Yes?
I have a question. I mean, when you communicate to your kids, those who goes to the regular public schools, they come and bring some questions, like why we don't eat, or my friends are asking this and that, how to convey them, how to kind of like train them, or at the same time, you give them right message, why we are different than other people. What's your take on that?
So, if I heard you correctly, your question is, how do we explain to children why we don't do things?
Yeah.
Okay. I've been married for about 2 years now. My wife is Yemeni, and through her, I inherited 11 nieces and nephews, and they're aged about 14 to 5. And the youngest ones now are asking me, when it's Christmas time, they're very excited about Christmas, and because that's something that they do in school. And I'm of the mindset that avoiding that, not having that discussion with your children is not healthy, is not good. Because my wife remembers, because she grew up in a different time, growing up in Dearborn, they would sing Christmas carols, and they would do things, in school that she recognizes now was something that she would not want our children to do. Again, one of those things where you have to have those conversations with your children. This is what we believe, this is what they believe, and this is something not to be ashamed of. Something I see within the Ummah that concerns me is that there's this general feeling, well, Christmas is so cool and Christmas is so fun, but Ramadan is so lame. I hear Muslim parents say things like this, like, I wish Ramadan Eid was more cool and we had more things to do. But if it's lame, quote unquote, whose fault is that? And should our concerns, are we competing with other faiths? I suppose we are in some sense, but having that conversation